Pope Innocent III and the rejection of Magna Carta, the clash of power and authority in medieval Europe. Introduction. The Magna Carta, sealed on the 15th of June, 1215, is widely recognized as one of the most significant documents in Western legal and political history. Initially conceived as a peace treaty between King John of England and his rebellious barons, the Magna Carta established a precedent for limiting the powers of the monarchy and safeguarding certain rights of the nobility. However, its implications extended far beyond the immediate conflict, laying the groundwork for the development of constitutional governance and the rule of law, concepts that continue to resonate in modern democracies. At the heart of the Magna Carta's historical significance is the tension between authority and liberty, a theme that has played out in various forms throughout history. This tension was starkly illustrated on the 24th of August, 1215, when Pope Innocent III, one of the most powerful and influential popes of the medieval period, issued a papal bull annulling the Magna Carta. By declaring the document null and void of all validity forever, Innocent III underscored the complex and often contentious relationship between the Church and secular authorities during the Middle Ages. Let's explore the circumstances leading to Pope Innocent III's rejection of the Magna Carta, the motivations behind his decision, and the broader implications for the relationship between the Church and state. Through an analysis of the historical context, the personalities involved, and the impact of this event, we will see how the rejection of the Magna Carta was a pivotal moment in medieval European history. It was not just a legal decision, but a reflection of the broader struggle for power and authority that characterized the medieval world. Part 1. Historical context of the Magna Carta. The reign of King John. King John of England, who ruled from 1199 until his death in 1216, is often remembered as one of the most controversial and unpopular monarchs in English history. His reign was marked by a series of military failures, financial exactions, and administrative abuses that led to widespread dissatisfaction among his subjects, particularly the English nobility. One of the most significant events of John's reign was the loss of Normandy in 1204. This loss was not just a territorial setback but a profound blow to the prestige of the English crown. Normandy had been held by the English crown since the Norman conquest of 1066, and its loss weakened England's position in Europe. The loss of Normandy also had significant financial implications, as it deprived the English crown of valuable revenues and forced John to impose heavy taxes to fund his military campaigns to regain the lost territories. To finance his efforts to reclaim Normandy and other territories, John resorted to levying heavy scutages, payments in lieu of military service, from his barons. This practice, along with other forms of taxation and financial exactions, fueled resentment among the nobility. The barons, who were already disillusioned with John's military failures, became increasingly angry at his demands for money. John's governance style further alienated his subjects. He was notorious for his arbitrary and often cruel treatment of those who opposed him, using imprisonment, fines, and other forms of coercion to maintain his authority. This behavior eroded the traditional feudal bonds between the king and his barons, as it violated the norms of mutual obligation that underpinned the feudal system. The barons expected the king to govern in accordance with established customs and to respect their rights and privileges. John's actions, however, were seen as a betrayal of these expectations. The culmination of these tensions was the Barons Revolt, which began in earnest in 1215. The revolt was not just a reaction to John's financial demands but also to his broader governance style, which the barons saw as a threat to their traditional rights and privileges. The barons sought to limit the king's power and to ensure that he governed in accordance with the law. The Barons Revolt. The Barons Revolt of 1215 was a significant event in the history of medieval England, marking the beginning of a sustained challenge to royal authority. The revolt was led by a group of powerful barons, including Robert Fitzwalter, who became the leader of the rebel forces. The barons' demands were encapsulated in the Magna Carta, a document that sought to address their grievances and to establish limits on the king's power. The Magna Carta was not an entirely new or revolutionary document. It was, in many ways, a reassertion of existing feudal rights and customs. However, it was significant in that it represented a collective assertion of these rights by the barons and a demand that the king respect them. The Magna Carta contained 63 clauses, many of which addressed specific grievances of the barons, such as the king's abuse of feudal rights, his excessive taxation, and his arbitrary justice. One of the key clauses of the Magna Carta was Clause 39, which stated that no free man shall be seized or imprisoned, or stripped of his rights or possessions, or outlawed or exiled, or deprived of his standing in any other way, nor will we proceed with force against him, or send others to do so, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land. This clause is often seen as the foundation of the principle of habeas corpus, the right to a fair trial, and the protection against arbitrary imprisonment. Another important clause was Clause 12, which required that no scutage or aid shall be levied in our kingdom without its general consent, unless it is for the ransom of our person, for the knighting of our eldest son, and for once marrying our eldest daughter. This clause established the principle that taxation required the consent of the kingdom, laying the groundwork for the later development of parliamentary consent to taxation. The barons initially sought to negotiate with King John, but when these negotiations failed, they resorted to force. In May 1215, the barons captured London, effectively seizing control of the capital and forcing John into a position where he had to negotiate. The result was the sealing of the Magna Carta at Runnymede on the 15th of June, 1215. However, this was only the beginning of the struggle, as the subsequent rejection of the Magna Carta by Pope Innocent III would reignite the conflict. The contents of the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta, while primarily a response to the immediate political crisis of 1215, contained several clauses that had far-reaching implications for the future of English governance. The document addressed the specific grievances of the barons, but also included provisions that limited the powers of the king and established the principle that the monarch was subject to the law. In addition to the clauses already mentioned, the Magna Carta contained provisions that addressed a wide range of issues, including the rights of widows, the administration of justice, and the regulation of trade. For example, Clause 8 stated that no widow shall be compelled to marry, so long as she wishes to remain without a husband. This clause was significant in that it sought to protect the rights of women, who were often vulnerable to coercion and exploitation in medieval society. Another important clause was Clause 17, which stated that common pleas shall not follow our court, but shall be held in some fixed place. This clause established the principle of the independence of the judiciary, ensuring that legal cases would be heard in a fixed location rather than being subject to the whims of the king's court. The Magna Carta also addressed issues related to the regulation of trade and commerce. Clause 41 stated that all merchants may enter or leave England unharmed and without fear, and may stay or travel within it, by land or water, for purposes of trade, free from all illegal exactions, in accordance with ancient and lawful customs. This clause was significant in that it sought to protect the rights of merchants and to promote trade, which was an important source of wealth and power in medieval England. While the Magna Carta was primarily concerned with the rights and privileges of the barons, it also contained provisions that had broader implications for English society as a whole. For example, Clause 60 stated that all these customs and liberties that we have granted shall be observed by all of our kingdom. This clause was significant in that it established the principle that the rights and liberties granted by the Magna Carta were not limited to the barons, but applied to all free men in England. Despite its significance, the Magna Carta was not a revolutionary document. It was a pragmatic solution to a specific political crisis, designed to restore peace and order in the kingdom. Nevertheless, its legacy as a symbol of liberty and justice has endured for centuries, influencing the development of constitutional law in England and beyond. Part 2. The papacy of Innocent III. Innocent III's vision of papal authority. Pope Innocent III, born Lotario dei Conti di Segni in 1160, was one of the most powerful and influential popes in the history of the Roman Catholic Church. His papacy, which lasted from 1198 until his death in 1216, was characterized by his assertive vision of papal supremacy over both spiritual and temporal matters. Innocent III believed that the Pope, as the Vicar of Christ, held supreme authority over all Christian rulers and that the Church had the right to intervene in secular affairs when necessary. Innocent III's vision of papal authority was rooted in his theological beliefs and his understanding of the Church's role in the world. He saw the Pope as the ultimate authority in Christendom, with the power to mediate disputes, enforce justice, and protect the Church's interests. This vision was articulated in Innocent's numerous writings and decrees, which emphasized the Pope's authority over both the Church and the secular world. Innocent III sought to realize his vision of a unified Christendom under papal leadership through a series of political and religious initiatives. He convened the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215, one of the most important church councils of the Middle Ages, which addressed issues of church reform, heresy, and the relationship between the Church and secular rulers. The Council's decrees reflected Innocent's vision of a Church that was both spiritually and politically powerful, capable of shaping the course of European history. Innocent III's vision of papal authority also extended to his relationships with secular rulers. He believed that the Pope had the right to intervene in the affairs of kings and emperors, particularly when their actions threatened the Church or the broader Christian community. This belief led to numerous conflicts between Innocent III and secular rulers, as he sought to assert his authority over them. Papal interventions in European politics. Innocent III's interventions in European politics were numerous and significant, reflecting his desire to assert papal authority over secular rulers. One of the most notable examples of this was his involvement in the Fourth Crusade, which was originally intended to recapture Jerusalem from Muslim control. However, the crusade ultimately deviated from its original purpose and resulted in the sack of Constantinople, a Christian city, in 1204. This event shocked the Christian world and led to a deep rift between the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. Despite the disastrous outcome of the Fourth Crusade, Innocent III continued to support crusading efforts, viewing them as a means of unifying Christendom under papal leadership. He also sought to combat heresy within Europe, launching the Albigensian Crusade against the Cathars in southern France. The Albigensian Crusade was one of the most brutal campaigns of the Middle Ages, resulting in the massacre of thousands of people and the near destruction of the Cathar heresy. In addition to his involvement in crusades, Innocent III asserted his authority in conflicts between secular rulers. One of the most significant examples of this was his conflict with King Philip II of France over the king's marriage. Philip II had divorced his wife, Ingeborg of Denmark, and married another woman, a decision that Innocent III condemned. The Pope excommunicated Philip and placed France under an interdict, effectively suspending religious services in the kingdom. The conflict was eventually resolved when Philip agreed to take back Ingeborg as his wife. Innocent III also played a key role in the succession dispute in the Holy Roman Empire following the death of Emperor Henry VI. The Pope initially supported Otto IV as emperor, but later shifted his support to Frederick II, the son of Henry VI, after Otto refused to comply with the Pope's demands. Innocent III's involvement in the imperial succession demonstrated his willingness to intervene in the affairs of secular rulers in order to protect the interests of the Church. Relationship with King John. Innocent III's relationship with King John of England was complex and multifaceted, reflecting the Pope's broader efforts to assert papal authority over secular rulers. The relationship between the two men was initially marked by conflict, particularly over the appointment of the Archbishop of Canterbury. When John refused to accept Stephen Langton, the Pope's candidate for the position, Innocent placed England under an interdict in 1208, effectively suspending religious services in the kingdom. This move was a powerful demonstration of the Pope's authority and his willingness to use spiritual sanctions to achieve his goals. John eventually capitulated to the Pope's demands, and in 1213, he formally submitted to Innocent III, becoming a vassal of the papacy. This submission gave Innocent III significant influence over English affairs, and he saw John as an important ally in his broader efforts to assert papal authority over secular rulers. However, this alliance would be tested by the events surrounding the Magna Carta. Innocent III's relationship with King John was also influenced by the broader political context of the time. John was deeply unpopular among his subjects, particularly the English barons, who resented his heavy taxation and arbitrary governance. The barons' discontent culminated in the rebellion of 1215, which led to the sealing of the Magna Carta. While Innocent III initially supported John in his conflict with the barons, the Pope's eventual rejection of the Magna Carta demonstrated the limits of their alliance. Part 3: The rejection of Magna Carta. Events leading to the papal rejection. The sealing of the Magna Carta in June 1215 was initially seen as a victory for the rebellious barons, who had forced King John to agree to their demands. However, John's acceptance of the Magna Carta was grudging at best, and he had no intention of adhering to its provisions. Almost immediately after the document was sealed, John began to seek ways to annul it. Given his status as a vassal of the Pope, John turned to Innocent III for support. Innocent III, who viewed the Magna Carta as a direct challenge to royal authority and, by extension, to his own influence, was more than willing to assist. The Magna Carta, in Innocent's eyes, was an illegitimate encroachment on the king's divinely ordained power. Moreover, he saw it as a dangerous precedent that could inspire similar demands from other subjects across Christendom, potentially undermining the established order. The papal rejection of the Magna Carta was influenced by several factors. First and foremost, Innocent III was concerned about the implications of the Magna Carta for the broader relationship between the Church and secular rulers. The document contained provisions that limited the king's power and established the principle that the monarch was subject to the law. Innocent saw these provisions as a direct threat to the traditional hierarchy of authority in Christendom, which placed the Pope at the top. Second, Innocent III was motivated by his desire to support King John, who was one of his most important allies in Europe. By rejecting the Magna Carta, the Pope sought to strengthen John's position and to reinforce the idea that the king's authority was derived from divine and ecclesiastical sources, not from any agreements with his subjects. Finally, Innocent III was concerned about the broader implications of the Magna Carta for the stability of the kingdom. The document had been forced upon King John by the barons, and Innocent saw this as a dangerous precedent that could lead to further unrest and rebellion. By annulling the Magna Carta, the Pope sought to restore order and to prevent the spread of similar demands in other parts of Europe. The papal bull Etsi Carissimus. On the 24th of August, 1215, Innocent III issued the papal bull Etsi Carissimus, in which he declared the Magna Carta null and void of all validity forever. The bull condemned the barons' actions, arguing that they had coerced the king into agreeing to the charter and that such agreements made under duress were not binding. In the bull, Innocent III asserted that the Magna Carta was shameful and demeaning, as it diminished royal authority and threatened the stability of the kingdom. He also emphasized that, as John was a vassal of the papacy, the Pope had the right to annul any agreements that were detrimental to his interests. The language of the bull was uncompromising, reflecting Innocent's determination to defend the traditional hierarchy of authority in Christendom. The papal bull also addressed the broader theological and legal implications of the Magna Carta. Innocent III argued that the document violated the principle of divine right, which held that the king's authority was derived from God and was therefore not subject to the will of his subjects. By challenging this principle, the Magna Carta threatened to undermine the established order and to promote rebellion and anarchy. The rejection of the Magna Carta by Innocent III was a significant blow to the barons' cause. It not only nullified the legal basis for their demands but also reinforced the idea that the king's authority was derived from divine and ecclesiastical sources, not from any agreements with his subjects. This assertion of papal authority had far-reaching implications for the relationship between the Church and secular rulers in medieval Europe. Reaction in England and Europe. The papal rejection of the Magna Carta had immediate and long-term consequences. In England, it reignited the conflict between King John and the barons, leading to the outbreak of the First Barons' War. The barons, now seeing the Pope as an adversary, sought assistance from Prince Louis of France, who invaded England in 1216 with the support of many of the barons. The involvement of a foreign prince in the conflict demonstrated the extent to which the rejection of the Magna Carta had destabilized the kingdom. The First Barons' War was a brutal and protracted conflict that further weakened King John's position. The war saw significant battles, sieges, and the involvement of various factions, including the French crown and Scottish forces. The conflict also had a profound impact on the English population, leading to widespread suffering and destruction. King John's death in October 1216 and the accession of his 9-year-old son, Henry III, changed the course of events. The Regency government, led by William Marshal, sought to restore peace and stability to the kingdom. Recognizing the need to address the grievances of the barons, Marshal reissued a modified version of the Magna Carta in 1216 and again in 1217. These reissued charters omitted some of the more radical provisions of the original Magna Carta but retained many of its key principles, such as the protection of baronial rights and the limitation of royal power. The reissuance of the Magna Carta in 1216 and 1217 marked a significant turning point in English history. While the original Magna Carta had been rejected by the Pope, its principles continued to evolve and to influence the development of English law and governance. The reissued charters were not merely symbolic gestures but practical attempts to address the grievances of the barons and to restore order to the kingdom. On a broader scale, Innocent III's rejection of the Magna Carta reinforced the ongoing struggle between secular and ecclesiastical authorities in medieval Europe. It highlighted the tension between the growing desire for legal and political reforms and the established power structures that sought to maintain the status quo. The conflict between the Pope and the barons was not an isolated event but part of a broader pattern of church-state relations in medieval Europe. Part 4. The broader impact of the rejection. Impact on English constitutional development. The rejection of the Magna Carta by Innocent III was a setback for the barons, but it did not mark the end of the document's influence. In fact, the events of 1215 and the subsequent reissues of the Magna Carta in 1216, 1217, and 1225 ensured that its principles became deeply embedded in English political culture. Over time, the Magna Carta came to be seen not just as a baronial peace treaty but as a foundational document that enshrined the rights of subjects against arbitrary rule. Its influence can be seen in the development of the English Parliament, the establishment of the common law, and the later constitutional struggles between the monarchy and Parliament in the 17th century. One of the key legacies of the Magna Carta was its influence on the development of the English Parliament. The document's requirement that the king seek the counsel of his barons before levying taxes laid the groundwork for the later development of the principle of parliamentary consent to taxation. This principle became a cornerstone of the English constitutional system and played a central role in the conflicts between the monarchy and Parliament in the 17th century. The Magna Carta also had a significant impact on the development of the common law, the body of law that developed in England over the centuries and became the basis for the legal systems of many countries around the world. The document's emphasis on the rule of law, the protection of individual rights, and the limitation of royal power influenced the development of legal principles that are still relevant today. In addition to its influence on the English legal and political system, the Magna Carta also had a broader impact on the development of constitutional governance in other parts of the world. The document was an important source of inspiration for the framers of the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which enshrined many of the principles first articulated in the Magna Carta, such as the right to a fair trial, the protection against arbitrary imprisonment, and the requirement that taxation be based on consent. Church versus state conflict. The annulment of the Magna Carta by Pope Innocent III was a clear example of the broader conflict between church and state that characterized much of medieval European history. The event underscored the Church's determination to maintain its authority over secular rulers, even in matters that seemed primarily political rather than spiritual. This struggle between ecclesiastical and secular authorities continued to play out in various forms across Europe. In England, it would re-emerge in the form of disputes over royal supremacy, such as those that occurred during the reigns of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. In other parts of Europe, the conflict took on different dimensions, but the underlying tension between religious and temporal power persisted. One of the most significant manifestations of the church-state conflict in medieval Europe was the investiture controversy, a series of disputes between the popes and the Holy Roman Emperors over the appointment of bishops and other church officials. The controversy, which began in the 11th century, was a major turning point in the history of the medieval church and led to significant changes in the relationship between the papacy and secular rulers. The investiture controversy was ultimately resolved by the Concordat of Worms in 1122, which established a compromise between the pope and the emperor. However, the underlying tension between church and state persisted, and the conflict over the appointment of bishops continued to be a source of tension in medieval Europe. The conflict between church and state also played a significant role in the development of legal and political thought in medieval Europe. Theologians and legal scholars of the time grappled with the question of the proper relationship between spiritual and temporal authority, and their writings had a profound influence on the development of political theory in the later Middle Ages. One of the most important figures in this intellectual tradition was Thomas Aquinas, whose writings on natural law and the relationship between church and state had a lasting impact on Western political thought. Aquinas argued that while the church had authority over spiritual matters, secular rulers had authority over temporal matters. However, he also maintained that secular rulers were subject to divine law and that the church had the right to intervene in secular affairs when necessary to protect the common good. The broader impact of the rejection of the Magna Carta by Innocent III can also be seen in the development of the concept of sovereignty, the idea that a state has supreme authority within its territory and is not subject to any external authority. The rejection of the Magna Carta was an assertion of papal authority over secular rulers, but it also highlighted the growing desire for greater autonomy and self-government among the secular rulers of Europe. Legacy of the Magna Carta. Despite its initial rejection, the Magna Carta's legacy as a symbol of liberty and the rule of law has endured. Over the centuries, it has been invoked by those seeking to limit the power of rulers and protect individual rights. The Magna Carta influenced the development of constitutional law not only in England but also in other countries, including the United States, where it served as an inspiration for the framers of the Constitution. The idea that the king, or any ruler, is subject to the law and that there are certain inalienable rights that must be respected has its roots in the Magna Carta. While Pope Innocent III may have sought to nullify the document, its principles proved resilient, shaping the course of Western political thought and legal systems. The Magna Carta's influence can also be seen in the development of international human rights law. The document's emphasis on the protection of individual rights and the limitation of arbitrary power has been echoed in various international human rights instruments, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the European Convention on Human Rights. The legacy of the Magna Carta is also evident in the continuing importance of the rule of law in modern democratic societies. The document's emphasis on the idea that everyone, including the ruler, is subject to the law has become a foundational principle of democratic governance. The Magna Carta's influence can be seen in the development of legal and political institutions that promote accountability, transparency, and the protection of individual rights. In addition to its legal and political legacy, the Magna Carta has also had a profound cultural impact. The document has been celebrated in literature, art, and popular culture, and its principles have been invoked by various movements for social and political reform. The Magna Carta has become a symbol of the struggle for liberty and justice, and its legacy continues to inspire people around the world. Conclusion. Pope Innocent III's rejection of the Magna Carta on the 24th of August, 1215, was a pivotal moment in medieval history, reflecting the complex interplay between secular and ecclesiastical power. While Innocent's decision was driven by his vision of papal supremacy and his desire to support King John, the rejection of the Magna Carta did not mark the end of the document's influence. Instead, the Magna Carta's principles continued to evolve, becoming a cornerstone of constitutional governance in England and beyond. The clash between the Pope and the Barons in 1215 was just one chapter in the long history of the struggle between authority and liberty, a struggle that continues to resonate in the modern world. Through this examination of Pope Innocent III's actions and the broader context of the Magna Carta, we can better understand the enduring significance of this historical event and its impact on the development of legal and political systems that value the rule of law and the protection of individual rights. The Magna Carta, despite its initial rejection, has left an indelible mark on history. It has shaped the development of constitutional law, inspired movements for liberty and justice, and continues to serve as a powerful symbol of the enduring struggle for human rights and the rule of law. Innocent III's rejection of the Magna Carta may have been intended to reinforce papal authority, but in the long run, it only served to highlight the document's significance and its lasting impact on the world. Thanks for listening. Like and comment. And please subscribe, as that will help us get more videos out to those interested in the Middle Ages. See you next time on Medieval Chronicles 1066. Stay curious.